Welcome to it. Today we're talking through 6 tips to help you while you are in or anticipating transition. And I'm going to share with you, honestly, a bit more personally about how I deal with change. Change is something that I have had a love-hate relationship with throughout the years, but it has been a really significant part of my life and how I got here to doing the work that I do. Which, if you're new around here, my name is Chelsea. I am a certified coach and a former therapist. And I really love doing the work of having conversations about what makes young adulthood really hard and challenging, especially from the space of mental and emotional health and well-being. So if you're working on finding yourself, learning how to come back to yourself in the moments that challenge you, learning how you can support yourself through the harder parts and the good parts, you are in the right place. Make sure that you like and subscribe to this channel, and let's dive into our conversation around dealing with change and how to navigate transition. So if you're not familiar, the reason why I say that I have gotten to know change so very well is because I currently, and not for very much longer, am a military spouse. And so what that has looked like for us, and in my experience at least, has been a lot of uncertainty, a lot of looming timelines or deadlines, knowing that change was likely coming, but not being able to control exactly what that looked like. And then a lot of shifts and pivots along the way. And as a military spouse, there is a lot of lack of control around what that change looks like at certain times. And historically, this was really challenging for me, especially in the beginning, because I was a person who always needed a plan. I latched onto plans for a sense of security, for a sense of safety, and also, if I'm being totally transparent, so that when people asked me what I was up to or what was coming next, I had a really solid answer, and I felt like, I can comfortably answer that. So right now, we are bumping up against our 6th move in 5 years. And there's still a lot of lingering, ongoing questions that at this time, my husband and I, we just can't quite answer. And that's where we're at. So I wanted to share 6 tips on dealing with transition and how I deal with change. Because this is a topic that I know, of course, I have struggled with, but I also see a lot of other people struggling with. And the truth is that change throughout life, whether we're choosing it or not, is inevitable. So how do we deal? What do we do with that? How do we get more comfortable with the potential discomfort around change? And you know what? Some people also love change, and there are many ways in which I love change. I don't like feeling stagnant. I don't like feeling stuck. I don't like monotony or doing the same thing day after day after day. I tend to like change when I choose it. So how do we deal with the both and here, knowing that there might be changes that we are choosing and there might be changes that we can't control or choose, and that this is going to apply in so many different facets of life, right? Maybe it is around a move for you. Maybe it is around a relationship ending. Maybe it is around a new season of life, be it becoming a parent or getting married or whatever it might be. Maybe you're changing jobs. Maybe you're changing careers. Maybe you notice your friends are starting to change and you're wanting to be around different people. How do you allow for that? How do you move through that? How do you navigate that? So I'm going to preface this with some of these tips that I'm about to share with you. You might not like. I don't like them a lot of the time, and they have been an ongoing work for me, which speaks to tip number 1. Make space to be in the not knowing, to be in an in-between, to be in a season of figuring it out. Because the truth is that we are more often than not figuring something out. And yet when we live from this incessant desire to have control, to have certainty, to have a plan, if you're anything like me, all that does is it puts a lot of stress and pressure and anxiety around what is right now. And a lot of times we can't rush things, or when we try to rush things, we choose things that aren't actually in our best interest in the long term, just so we can have an answer. Or maybe we go back to what was once familiar because we are uncomfortable in the not knowing. So my first offering for you is to think about how can you make space, and let's just normalize the heck out of not knowing all of the time. When we're in transition, when we're in change, when we know either we need some type of change or transition, or one is coming, or we're in the midst of that process, that it is okay to not know all of the time. Then what we do is step number 2 is to come back to that level of self-trust, When the doubt and the fear and the messiness feel so overwhelming, which hands up, I've been there, I am there still quite often sometimes. Rather than looking outside and grasping again for any sense of certainty or control, how can we instead practice self-trust and tuning inward? And for me, this often looks like the reminder of no matter what my outside world looks like, I trust that I will make the next best decision with the information and the choices that are available to me. And I continue to remind myself of that when my fear brain is wanting to have a plan or wanting to have it all figured out in a way that's actually causing me more pain in the here and the now. Yeah? Tip number 3 is to allow a mix of emotions, right? So I hinted at this a little bit earlier, but some people might really love change. Some people might really resist change, but most of us are a mix of both of those things. On the one hand, change and transition sometimes feels really exciting and opening and expansive. And then on the other hand, it might feel really, really scary. Because the truth of the matter is that our physical bodies are programmed to enjoy and find stability in what is familiar. So just the sheer fact that we haven't been through this before is likely going to stir up a lot of emotions. And at the same time, we also make space for grieving what we once knew, what we once had. And the important piece here is that it gets to be a both and. You don't only have to or get to feel one way as you're navigating this transition or change. You can feel it all. You can have it all, right? So for example, right now, me knowing that we're about to move and our life is about to change in many ways, and the military life is coming to its end, which on the one hand I'm so excited about and so grateful about, and on the other hand I'm starting to experience sadness and grief for all of the incredible people and the lifestyle that we've had throughout the past 6 years plus, and not knowing exactly how that will stick with us moving forward. We get to feel it all. It is all allowed. It all makes sense. It's all okay. And a lot of times where I see more emotional discomfort comes up is when we try and force ourselves to feel only one way. When the reality is that we as humans we have the capacity to experience multiple emotions and hold them at the same time. So can you give yourself permission to maybe one day feel super on fire, super excited, super optimistic about all that's to come? And then on the other hand, to be grieving and sad and maybe even scared or frustrated with not knowing the answers quite yet, right? Like it all can exist. So that's the real important number 3. 4, how can you work on releasing this idea of perfection or of getting there? The truth of the matter is that oftentimes as soon as we get there, we find another there to latch onto, right? So if you've ever had this experience where maybe you were striving for something or you were awaiting something, and then you got that thing and immediately your mind, your vision was on to the next, right? Can we release this idea that once we have something, be it stability after change and transition, be it a degree or a title or a relationship status, that then it ends, right? We are ever evolving beings as humans. So when we have this kind of addiction to the chase, which again, everything that I share about, I also just want to add a little disclaimer here. Sometimes we can put coaches or therapists up on a pedestal, and like, I'm a human too. We are all human here. So everything that I talk about, I've likely experienced in my own way, shape, or form throughout my life. And this is absolutely true throughout this video that I'm sharing here today, right? But anyways, getting back to point number 4, is a constant striving to be there, to be on to the next, to be in the next season, to be on to the next thing. How can you remind yourself that when you get there, you will still be you? Right? And that kind of goes back to the power of really developing a genuine, deep level of self-trust. Because you go with you wherever you go. Wherever you go, there you are. If you ever heard that quote before, right? It really, really is true. So again, when going through a lot of change and transition, we can spend a lot of time thinking about the future. So my 5th tip for you is to think about what are the things and what are the ways that you connect back to a sense of presence and to a grounding in the here and the now. So for me, this often looks like very physical practices. So I very frequently will go outside and stick my bare feet in the earth and just take a couple of breaths or a few moments to recognize that I am here in a present moment. Or maybe that looks like taking 3 to 5 slow, deep breaths to calm your nervous system and come back to where you are in the here and the now. So what are the things that help you come back to presence, come back to a sense of groundedness when maybe that fear brain is really, really getting stuck on the future and the not knowing and the uncertainty of the change or the transition or the anticipation of it, right? We get to have that both and part of that is also coming back to the here and the now and being with yourself in this moment with where you are right now. And another thing, my 6th tip for you, is to create really nourishing rituals, habits, or routines that feel stable, that move with you. So this is something that I teach about in a lot of my programs because I think it can be so helpful, is to develop what are the ways that consistently you can connect back to yourself. Is it a morning practice? Is it something that you do every once in a while throughout your weeks? What are the habits, rituals, and practices that continue to bring you back to yourself? So that even amidst change or transition or uncertainty, there is some sense of stability within you, right? So these are not things outside of you, but they are practices that you cultivate, that you can take with you no matter where you go, no matter how much time you have, right? They get to be fluid, they get to move with you. What might that look like for you in your life? So for me, that often does actually look like some time to myself in the mornings where it doesn't always look the same, but maybe it's a slow, mindful cup of coffee, or maybe it's a few minutes of journaling, or my yoga practice, or just being mindful of how I'm feeling my body throughout my days, or making sure that I get some type of movement practice in more often than not, in a way that feels good for me because that helps me feel connected back to myself and something bigger. So these are some random examples, but what are the habits, rituals, routines that you can cultivate that are flexible enough that they move with you, but consistent enough that it feels like a sense of stability for you to keep coming back to yourself? Okay, so that was a lot of big picture things that I just talked you through, but they really are a lot of the pillars that support me and have supported many of my clients During this time of transition and change and meeting ourselves where we're at, but also taking radical self responsibility in how we guide ourselves through the inevitable changes and transitions that we will all encounter throughout our lives in many different ways. So if this resonates with you, drop in the comments the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. What resonates with you most? And what are you going to be centering your attention in on to support yourself as you navigate whatever change or transition is coming up or is here in your life in the here and the now? And if you're wanting more support around this is a huge part of the program that I have created that I walk so many of my clients through to help them really cultivate the foundations of their emotional well-being, their mental health, and develop that relationship with themselves where they feel held no matter what might be going on around them or what uncertainty they might be enduring. So click the link below if you'd like to book a call with me to learn more about what that program looks like and how it can support you right now as you're navigating change and transition. And then if you are not already, make sure that you subscribe to the channel. And if you're wanting to learn more about what I just talked about in tip number 6 around creating habits and rituals and routines, make sure you check out this video on establishing healthy, sustainable routines. I'll see you very soon, friend.